Hi there, it's Brother Eli. Namaste. I am here to talk about Church Universal and Triumphant topics, topics relevant to the Summit Lighthouse, people who are adherents of the spiritual leaders, Mark and Elizabeth Clare, Prophet. Today I'm going to be online looking at some information about Noah and the flood. And this is a prayer session. I call it a darshan because someone who is in holy orders holds the balance in a way that helps other people. So it's a little bit like sitting around a guru. If you go to see Yogi Raj, for instance, or Anandamayi Ma, these people are powerful and holy not just because of the breadth of their knowledge, but also because of who they are. And so it's a benefit just to be around it. That's why I would not want to discourage people from remaining prayerful throughout this, even though there are going to be gaps. I'm not delivering dictation presently. I'm not. It won't be a continuous stream of information. I'll be studying, but maintain heightened state of awareness throughout, because it will help galvanize the work that you're doing. So today we're talking about Noah and we're talking about Sanat Kumara, and I'm going to be quoting from the Encyclopedia, which is our holy text. I should say I don't know that people consider the Encyclopedia the TSL Encyclopedia a holy text, but it contains holy information. Let's put it that way. And I'll also take a look at the Bible. Let's take a look to see. I have recommended BibleNet.org in the past because it has a feature called Lumina, right? Like the Elohim of the second ray, correct? Apollo and Lumina. But it's not King James. So if people are entirely devoted to King James, actually I shouldn't say that, because I'm quite sure that BibleNet.org likely contains a King James version. Okay, I'm there now. Hard to say exactly where. Let's see if we can look up King James. This is actually Net Bible. Let's see if I can actually get to BibleNet.org. If that's still out. BibleNet.org. Nope, that's not still out. Or if it is. Okay. There is a BibleNet.org. Actually, one is for sale. The domain name is for sale. All one word. I'll find this for you guys. I'm not going to edit this, so there's going to be some slow information in here, but again, maintain your prayerfulness throughout. I believe to say that that's really the prayerful state to which I refer you, S-A-M-A-D-H-I, and of course Hindus will be familiar with this. It's not necessarily funerary either. It's not necessarily the final stage. Samadhi, Anandamaya Ma would be in states of samadhi. If you look at photographs of the saints periodically, the Indian saints in particular, well, the Roman Catholic saints too, when they look like they're in a state of passion or in a heightened state of awareness, that's basically they're in samadhi. It's also present in Jainism, Sikhism, and Buddhism. They understand it there as well. Let me give you more information about it. Sometimes it's translated into concentration. It's also referred to as single pointedness of mind. I'm familiar with the concept of single-eyed vision. We're calling it, the Chopra Center is calling it the 8th limb of yoga. It literally means putting together. The 8th limb is the practice of the entire program, is what they're saying at the Chopra Center. So, so that does relate to the secret chamber of the heart, right? Concentration is the key word for the secret chamber of the heart. A state of oneness, complete absorption. There are a number of definitions here. How about Noah in the King James Bible, which you can access online, kingjamesbibleonline.org. Okay, Noah is in Genesis 5. Likely starting at 29. And he called his name Noah, saying, this same man, meaning same man, shall comfort us concerning our work and toil of our hands, because of the ground which the Lord hath cursed. And that is going to be in the part of Genesis where they start with the lineage, Methuseleh, Lamech, and so forth. Beginning at 26, and Methuseleh lived after he begat Lamech 780 and 2 years, and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Methuseleh were 960 and 9 years, and he died. And Lamech lived in 182 years, and begat a son, and he called his name Noah, saying, This same shall comfort us concerning our work and toil of our hands, because of the ground which the Lord hath cursed. And Lamech lived after he begat Noah 595 years, and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Lamech were 777 years, and he died. And Noah was 500 years old, and Noah begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And let's see if I can get to 33. Next chapter. So we'll begin with 6. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. This is what the Lord said, is that people will live 120 years. I think that's a general statement. I don't think he's talking about anyone in particular. It doesn't appear that he's talking about... It could be that he's talking about Noah at this point. I'll have to find that out. It might be that he's talking about Noah, but he's stating in advance that his days... The Lord said this, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. Verse 4, There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men. Remember, this is about the fallen ones, correct? And they bare children to them. The same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. So these were the giants, to the best of my awareness. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. This is verbatim from the King James Version as it appears online, including what sound like grammatical errors to us. That's what's written here. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man, whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. And Noah begat 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, The end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make thee an ark of gopher wood. Rooms shalt thou make in the ark, and shalt pitch it within and without with pitch. And this is the fashion which thou shalt make it of. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, the breadth of it 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. A window shalt thou make to the ark, and in a cubit shalt thou finish it above. And the door of the ark shalt thou set in the side thereof, with lower, second, and third stories shalt thou make it. So 3 stories. And behold, this is said specifically in the Bible, and behold, I, even I, by God, right? And behold, I, even I, do bring a flood of waters upon the earth, to destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life from under heaven, and everything that is in the earth shall die. But with thee will I establish my covenant, and thou shalt come into the ark, thou, and thy sons, and thy wife, and thy sons' wives with thee. And of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort shalt thou bring into the ark, to keep them alive with thee. They shall be male and female. Of fowls after their kind, and of cattle after their kind, of every creeping thing of the earth after his kind, 2 of every sort shall come unto thee, to keep them alive. And take thou unto thee of all food that is eaten, and thou shalt gather it to thee, and it shall be for food for thee and for them. Thus did Noah according to all that God commanded him, so did he. Chapter 7. And the Lord said unto Noah, Come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee I have seen righteous before me in this generation. Of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by sevens, the male and his female, and of beasts that are not clean by two, the male and his female. Of fowls also of the air by sevens, the male and the female, to keep seed alive upon the face of all the earth. Is it 7 sets at a time? Maybe they're referring to that. For yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and every living substance that I have made will I destroy from off the face of the earth. And Noah did according unto all that the Lord commanded him. And Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters was upon the earth. And Noah went in, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him into the ark because of the waters of the flood. Of clean beasts and of beasts that are not clean, and of fowls and of everything that creepeth upon the earth, there went in 2 and 2 unto Noah into the ark, the male and the female, as God had commanded Noah. And it came to pass after 7 days that the waters of the flood were upon the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, 600 year of Noah's life, not sure where we're getting 120 years before, unless he's talking about man generally put, or another figure. When God said he shall live 120 years, I don't have a context for that here if Noah is living 600 years. The 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were open, and the rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. And the selfsame day entered Noah and Shem and Ham and Japheth, the sons of Noah, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them, into the ark. They and every beast after his kind, and all the cattle after their kind, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, and every fowl after his kind, every bird of every sort. They went in unto Noah into the ark, 2 and 2 of all flesh, wherein is the breath of life. And they that went in male and female of all flesh, as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him in. And the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased and bare up the ark, and it was lift up above the earth, and the waters prevailed and were increased greatly upon the earth, and the ark went upon the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered, and all flesh died that moved upon the earth, both of fowl, and of cattle, and of beast, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, and every man. All in whose nostrils was the breath of life of all that was in the dry land died, and every living substance was destroyed, which was upon the face of the ground, both man and cattle, and the creeping things, and the fowl of the heaven, and they were destroyed from the earth. And Noah only remained alive, and they that were with him in the ark. And the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days. And God remembered Noah. This is chapter 8, beginning with 1. And God remembered Noah and every living thing, and all the cattle that was with him in the ark. And God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters assuaged. The fountains also of the deep and the windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained. And the waters returned from off the earth continually, and after the end of the 150 days the waters were abated. And the ark rested in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, upon the mountains of Ararat. 5. And the waters, verse 5, and the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the 1st day of the month, were the tops of the mountains seen. And it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. And he sent forth a raven, which went forth to and fro until the waters were dried up from off the earth. And also he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters were abated from off the face of the ground. But the dove found no rest for the sole of her foot, and she returned unto him into the ark, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. Then he put forth his hand and took her, and pulled her in unto him into the ark. And he stayed yet other 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came into him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So no one knew that the waters were abated from off the earth. And he stayed yet other 7 days, and sent forth the dove, which returned not again unto him any more. And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried up from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark, and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. That's interesting. Of course, they're not using the Julian calendar. They're not using our calendar. But they are saying, in the Hebrew text, the Old Testament, the Torah, that it's in the first month, the first day of the month of the 601st year, okay? So, roughly equivalent to January 1st, I suppose, in some respects. What they're saying is that, at least with regard to how they're organizing their timeline back then, it was the very first of the year, of the Old Testament year, where the waters dried up from off the earth. These are details that don't necessarily prevail or are not necessarily salient in the typical churches. And it came to pass in the 600th, I'll repeat beginning at verse 13, again we're on chapter 8. And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried up from off the earth, and Noah removed the covering of the ark, and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. And in the second month, in the 27th day of the month, was the earth dried. And God spake unto Noah, saying, Go forth of the ark, thou, and thy wife, and thy sons' wives with thee. Bring forth with thee every living thing that is with thee, of all flesh, both of fowl and of cattle, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, that they may breed abundantly in the earth, and be fruitful, and multiply upon the earth. And Noah went forth, and his sons, and his wife, and his sons' wives with him, every beast, every creeping thing, and every fowl, and whatsoever creepeth upon the earth, after their kinds, it says, went forth out of the ark. And Noah builded an altar unto the Lord, and took of every clean beast, and of every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled a sweet savor, and the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth, neither will I again smite any more everything living as I have done. The imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth, neither will I again smite any more everything living as I have done. I can comment briefly here about early neoclassical cults, Greco-Roman cults. This is Greek and Roman both had cults where they were giving burnt offerings. There's a horror film called Burnt Offerings, right? Burnt offerings, that's what, when the people refer to burnt offerings, that's what it is. It's burning whatever the sacrifice is on the altar. Before this era, before this was generated, this was also done in pagan communities in Greece and Rome. And the idea is to get to the gods, you take, back in the day at least, they weren't vegetarian, you take beef, or you're burning some sort of meat, and it's really after the sacrifice of an animal. This is what we were taught in college, at the very least. After the sacrifice of the animal, the cow or the goat, whatever they were doing, they burn it, and the god, and back then it wasn't God, of course, it was gods. The gods actually know, because of that odor. It's the divine odor, and it is supposedly pleasing to the gods. In this instance, what's interesting is that God smells the sweet savor and says, I will not again curse the ground anymore for man's sake. So he basically, at that point, when he smelled the offering, according to 21, verse 21, says, I will not again curse the ground anymore for man's sake, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. That's interesting, you know. You could interpret that. I don't know that biblical scholars do that. I think that a lot of times biblical scholars miss nuances So we're not taught things, but it's really, who knows why? God smells it, and he's not necessarily delighted. In a way, it's pity, as opposed to the pagan gods, who are fantastic. Now we'll do all these wonderful things for you because you have given a burnt offering. In this instance, Noah gives the offering. God smells it and says, "Okay, I'm done. I won't condemn you again." But he's not doing it out of joy. He's doing it because he realizes at that point that man's heart is evil from his youth. This could be an argument for vegetarianism. I'm just saying. And that actually, there's evidence for that earlier on in Genesis as well. Initially before the fall of man, before man was booted out of the Garden of Eden. Why was man booted out of the Garden of Eden? Well, because they ate the apple of knowledge, and they weren't supposed to. God said, you can have whatever you want in this garden to eat, but not that. And what did they do? They went and of course, we'll talk about blaming it on Eve under another in another topical video, because it was actually Eve's idea, and it was the snake, it was the serpent who told Eve about the apple, and said that she should do it anyway. But before, in Genesis, earlier on in Genesis, when they're talking about Eden, they weren't eating meat at that time at all. At that point, they were only eating. They weren't eating the animals; they were naming the animals. So I mean, even the beef, cattle, and fish and so forth they were being named by man, but they weren't being consumed by man. And I've read elsewhere, and we'll have to take another look at it, that it's only after the fall that people started to feel that they could eat animals. It's interesting, but yeah, it's actually, I think it's seed-based plants that they were. Well, all plants aren't all plants bearing seeds, or there's something to do with seed-bearing fruit. I'll look it up for you, and I'll give you that otherwise. But that's interesting. 21 is an interesting verse, because again, chapter 8, verse 21. It goes exactly like this according to King James. And the Lord smelled a sweet savor, and the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more every living thing. It says everything living, as I have done. Which also seems to echo what he had just said about, apparently based upon the odor of the sacrifice. And the smell, the awareness of the animal sacrifice. Also interesting. That second part. Neither will I again smite any more everything living, as I have done. 22, moving on. While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. So that's the additional part of the covenant, is that there will be harvest, seeds, cold and heat, contrast, summer and winter, and day and night. Chapter 9, and God blessed Noah and his sons, and said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every fowl of the air, upon all that moveth upon the earth, and upon all the fishes of the sea. Into your hand are they delivered. Every morning, every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you, even as the green herb have I given you all things. So at this point, that's an interesting change of pace. It's almost as if God recants and realizes with the sacrifice that there's a problem at that juncture. But again, when we talk about, this is the first point in the Bible in Genesis, and so it doesn't necessarily contradict what I said earlier, because you have to think of God's motive. He could be taking pity at that point, because he said, I can't do this again. These people are bad from the beginning, or evil in their youth, and ergo, I need to either be permissive or change my outlook. But it does support the notion that man was vegetarian before the fall. Adam and Eve were in perfect harmony with God before they violated the prohibition against the apple of knowledge. So in a way, we meet because Adam and Eve originally fell. And of course, Adam and Eve represents, before the fall, represent mankind at its perfected state. To some, we can debate that, but now it's you may now eat meat, but it's only after God has to intervene with regard to the flood that he states that as much. They were not eating meat in the Garden of Eden. 3 says, every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you, even as the green herb have I given you all things. And that's not necessarily, I suppose that's not necessarily a blessing. Correct? And then it says, but flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, shall ye not eat. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you, even as the green herb have I given you all things. But then he goes on to say in verse 4, but flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, shall ye not eat. Let's see if we can find an interpretation. What does Genesis 9:4 mean? And he does say here in the interpretation, whether or not mankind was specifically allowed to eat animals prior to flood, they are given specific permission now to do just that. And see, they're saying it's humans. They're saying that it's referring to humans, but I'm not sure that that's entirely true with verse 4. That's what the scholars are saying. When he says the part about living flesh, they say here in the interpretation, however, while God does allow man the ability to eat animal flesh, he includes a restriction. Humans are not to eat the blood of these animals along with their flesh. Humans are not to eat the blood of these animals along with their flesh. The verse describes the blood as the animal's life. Interesting. Later, under the law of Moses, Israelites will be required to very carefully drain the blood from animals before consuming them. So they're talking about the slaughter. I don't quite have the words to get into all of that presently, but that's what they're discussing here. And of course, slaughter is more than just the physical concept of destroying an animal and consuming the animal that you physically destroyed. Later under the law of Moses, Israelites will be required to very carefully drain the blood. It doesn't say quotes here, I'm adding quotes, the blood from animals before consuming them. This deep respect for blood is the first step in a long process establishing the symbolism of Christ's sacrifice for human sin on the cross. Okay, and Noah is going to get drunk and naked and be found by Ham. This is all actually really interesting stuff that you don't hear about in Sunday school. So, and surely, but flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, shall ye not eat. So, really what he's saying is that I mean, God basically is stating here, not so much that you're not, first of all, that thing about humans, he's not referring to humans. He's saying that you're not to eat anything that was ever alive. In 4. Verse 4. Chapter 9, 5, and surely your blood of your lives will I require, at the hand of every beast will I require it, and at the hand of man, and at the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man. 6, whoso sheddeth man's blood by man shall his blood be shed, for in the image of God made he man. 7, and you be fruitful and multiply, bring forth abundantly in the earth and multiply therein. And God spake unto Noah and to his sons with him, saying, and I behold, And I, behold, I establish my covenant with you and with your seed after you, and with every living creature that is with you, of the fowl, of the cattle, and of every beast of the earth with you, from all that go out of the ark to every beast of the earth. And I will establish my covenant with you. Neither shall all flesh be cut off any more by the waters of a flood, neither shall there any more be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, This is the token of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. That's interesting, that particular interpretation, bow in the cloud. And it shall come to pass when I bring a cloud over the earth that the bow shall be seen in the cloud, and I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh, and the water shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh. The covenant is not just between man and God, but between God and the animals as well. It says that specifically. And I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. 16, and the bow shall be in the cloud. Okay. And I will look upon it, that I may remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, This is the token of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is upon the earth. And the sons of Noah that went forth of the ark were Shem and Ham and Japheth, and Ham is the father of Canaan. These are the 3 sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread. So everybody on earth is related to Noah, according to the Bible. We're all descendants of Noah. And Noah began to be a husbandman, and he planted a vineyard. And he drank of the wine, and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent. 21. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his 2 brethren without. And Shem and Japheth took a garment, and laid it upon both their shoulders, and went backward, and covered the nakedness of their father, and their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine, and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan. A servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. And Noah lived after the flood 350 years. And all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. Chapter 10. So Noah's gone at this point, and then we're going to go into Right, and Canaan was a son of Ham. And the other sons were Cush, Mizraim, and Phut. And then it goes, the begatting, Cush begat Nimrod, and it keeps going through Nineveh. Actually, Nineveh was built several generations after Noah passed. And I won't get into that because it really is not the story anymore. But it will end at, chapter 10 will end at 32, where it says that these are the families of the sons of Noah after their generations and their nations, and by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood. And so that's basically it. I mean, people will be interested because it's that I just don't want to go through and tumble over all the names, the pronunciations of all the names and so on. But it is relevant, but all the Noah information basically stops at chapter 10. And what will happen in 11 is the beginning of Babel. Let us build a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven. And let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men builded. And the Lord said, Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do. Let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of the earth, and they left off to build the city. So that's why we all speak different languages, so that ultimately our effort to best God, our effort to try to reach heaven as a single people with a one language is thwarted, basically, is what's being said here. I think really probably like one interpretation is that this is a commentary probably against fascism, I would imagine. Someone we're speaking earlier about single-pointed vision. Well, these people just say, we're going to go to heaven. Now, heaven is really God's business. It's like with the apple. It's none of you. It's according to God, and of course, there's an argument that eating of the apple of knowledge is actually there's an occult benefit to it and so forth. That's really not. That does contradict typical Christianity, of course, to do that. But some darker occultists or more certainly not generally. It's not at all taught at CET, but there are occultists who say, well, really, the apple is what we needed in order to be magical, individually powerful, transformers, and so forth. Some people believe that God needs to be bested in some instances. Of course, we think that we do that in concert with God by decreeing, which is directing, asking God to direct light, or even demanding that the angels intervene, or asking the angels to intervene, I suppose, as well. We are directing change when we decree, but I suppose we're trying to do it in harmony with God's creation and not in opposition to it. Although God's creation is fallen now, so we could go back and forth about whether or not we're actually bossing God around. Even among the good guys here on the white side of things, but Babel, he put an end to that when he came down, saw it, and said, "Now you don't understand each other anymore." So that's what happened. In other words, the Old Testament God is really not like the New Testament God at all. The Old Testament God, it's had a contentious relationship with man. Okay, and I won't go into Babel yet. But so basically we can mark it to 10. What is it, 4 to 10? Is that what we said? Right. Seth is mentioned in 4. Actually, really, the no information begins at 5. But what we're looking at in 4 is chapter 4. Lamech. I'm at Enoch and Lamech now. If you want to follow the chronology from Enoch, which basically is pretty interesting and relevant to the Noah story, it really does begin in 4. So it would be chapter 4, beginning right around verse 15. What happens is that Cain slays Abel. 16. Well, this does unfold in close proximity. It's good to remember for us to remind each other that that's how it goes in the Bible in Genesis. Interesting stories, three interesting stories, basically in proximity to each other. Cain slays Abel. God actually protects Cain after he kills his brother. God actually puts a sphere of protection around Cain to protect Cain from reprisal. So even though Cain killed Abel, Cain went out, had a wife, had a life, was protected, and had children. Enoch was Cain's son. So Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. Verse 16, 17, and Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Enoch, and he builded a city and called the name of the city after the name of the son Enoch. And unto Enoch was born Irad, and it goes on. And Lamech was, it goes Enoch, Methuseleh, Lamech. I think that's correct, but they're referring to him as Methuseleh. I don't know if that's the same guy or not. I remember Methuseleh is known for having lived longer, I think, than anyone else in the Bible. Okay, I have an answer for that. Is Lamech in Genesis 4:18-26 the same Lamech mentioned in Genesis 5:25-32? Father of Lamech in Genesis 4 said to be Methuseleh. He has my question. And in Genesis 5, Lamech's father is listed as Methuselah. Fathers' names are spelled slightly different. Best answer, the son of Methuseleh and a descendant of Cain. His lifetime and Adam's overlapped. In any event, I'm going to ignore that particular problem. I'm just going to tell you exactly, again, I get them messed up all the time. Whose grandfather is Noah and where Enoch fits into all of that. I'll tell you right now, though. I've repeated this before. It just takes committing to memory. Methuselah lived for 969 years. Right, it actually goes Adam, Abel. This is the chronology. Adam, Abel, Seth. But that's not right because Seth is not Abel's son. Seth is Adam and Eve's son to replace Abel. Methuselah was the son of Enoch, so it goes Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, Noah, Jacob, Japheth, Shem, and Ham, as the three sons of Noah, from whom we're all descended. A timeline of Genesis patriarchs. Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech. Adam dies at age 930, so Adam was alive for the birth of those successive generations. Adam lived to be 930 years old. Enoch taken up by God, remember. That's probably the most important concept in all of this. Did not die, okay? Enoch did not die. Enoch never died. He was taken wholly into heaven, as Jesus was, eventually. And I believe that they say that about Mary too, although that differs between the Roman Catholics have a different opinion about that. From their opinion differs from the Orthodox opinion. That's a very interesting thread to follow. Mary, not the same Mary in Orthodox Christianity, in the Orthodox churches, the Russian Orthodox, the Coptic, and so forth. They don't have the same conception of Mary at all. At the Roman Catholic Church, where truly she's more like an angel in some respects. The Orthodox view on Mary is that she was a human, a very great holy woman, but that's not the same thing as being conceived without sin. Mary herself was conceived sinlessly. Not only was Jesus conceived sinlessly, basically his father was basically a ray from God, but Mary herself had an immaculate birth, according to the Roman Catholics. I think that the Orthodox believe that she was a great holy woman. Mary was a great holy woman, but then she died and was just typically buried. It's not the same thing as what happens in Roman Catholicism. That's a topic for another video. But right, it goes Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech. Adam dies in the year, 930. He dies at age 930 years, and then at age 365, that's interesting, 365, like the Julian calendar, the number of days in the Julian calendar, Enoch is taken up by God. Seth lived to be 912 years old, and Noah was born generation 10. He was the 10th generation, okay? Okay. Timeline of Genesis patriarchs. The timeline of the Tanakh. Well, this says Tanakh here. I'm familiar with this as the Torah. I don't know if... The Torah is a portion of the Tanakh, okay. I'll have to double check that with, the... I'm looking at, it's a wise geek or Wikipedia, and people can go in and change the information. That's part of the problem with Wikipedia. The Tanakh is the canon of the Hebrew Bible, consisting of 3 traditional subdivisions: the Torah, the Nevi'im, and the Ketuvim. Noah Center for Tanakh-based Studies. But the Tanakh is not necessarily the entirety of the Bible at all. That's the problem. The Tanakh contains very specific Hebrew rules, early Judaic rules, including rules about public commodities, land use. It's basically like the law of the land. It could be that the Torah is contained within the Tanakh, and I'll give you more information about that. And some people refer to the entirety of the Jewish text as quote-unquote the Torah, but more narrowly, the Torah is really the first 5 books of the Bible. They're calling it Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Those are the first 5 books of the Old Testament, also known as the Torah. Someone here is saying that Genesis is the book of beginnings, Exodus is the book of redemption, Leviticus is the book of holiness, Numbers is wilderness wanderings, and Deuteronomy is reiteration and reviewing. Okay, and Torah.org, so presumably they have good information. Beginning the 24 books of the Jewish Bible, remember Origen, who was an embodiment of Mark Prophet, identified 22 books of the New Testament. Is that how that works with Origen, or is that's old, right? I was right. It is New Testament. So remember, Origen was the figure who said definitively these are the books of the New Testament. 22 books, and he was an embodiment of Mark Prophet. That's one of Mark's gifts to humanity. His authority and discernment when it came to the books of the Bible. These are tangents from Genesis, but they're interesting, so. They say 27 here. We'll have to take a look and see. I'll get the actual. All of this says 27. I don't know where I came up with 22 before. Let's see what Summit has to say. And really, instead of going directly to the Summit Lighthouse, it should probably be directly to the encyclopedia. And some of this is in Spanish, unfortunately. Yeah, I won't find it there, I don't believe. Let's see if we can get the encyclopedia up and going here. Okay, Origin of Alexandria, official. The name Origin means son of or Horus. Secret. There's a secret teaching here, if you folks want to hear that. Origin took the Bible figuratively, okay? In contrast with many of the early church fathers, Origin insisted on a philosophical approach to the Bible. He came to many of the same conclusions modern man has reached. For example, it is common today to view the creation story as allegory. Origin also took it figuratively. He tells us that the first chapters of Genesis do not describe actual events but indicate certain mysteries. He also tells us we can't take everything in the Gospels literally, concluding that episodes which did not occur are inserted among those which are literally recorded. That's one of Guru Ma's objections to what happened in the Council of Nicaea. Or it's similar to that objection. In contrast, some saints tell us that paradise is a real place on earth with real trees and rivers. And Augustine argues that the world has existed for only 6,000 years. Their ideas monopolized religion for more than 1,500 years. And then the secret teaching here. In any event, I had heard that Origin had directed 22 books of the Bible, had indicated the 22 that were the actual books. And then part of the secret teaching has to do with free will, implying reincarnation. Origen speaks of the Christ as the mediator between God and man. He also refers to a place of instruction for souls after death. He concludes that since the teaching of the Church includes the doctrine of the righteous judgment of God, man must have a free will to choose to live a good life by avoiding sin. So it's 22, 24, 27 books of the Bible, of the New Testament. It's not listed at TSL presently. Okay. All this is what exactly? This is saying Old Testament, 22 books at a authentic looking Hebrew site. But Origen didn't have anything to do with the Old Testament. Presumably, it's Origen who said how many books were in the King James Version of the New Testament, correct? So, I'll be re-engaging you folks with some more interesting information in a minute. I'm sorry, this is something that I really wanted to nail down. Well, they're saying 27 books, to the best of my knowledge, in the New Testament, King James. Okay. Alright, let's get back to the Noah question. And so what we want to look at now is Sanat Kumara to see how Atlantis and Sanat Kumara tie into the traditional biblical representations of the Noah flood that I read to you previously. Really, and I think that it's smart to just cut directly to the encyclopedia at the Summit Lighthouse. The Sanat Kumara. The Ancient of Days, okay, that's the other name for him. We're aware of that. That's a really bad picture of Sanat Kumara right there. Okay, and there's the one I recognize. One of the 7 holy Kumaras, also known as Lords of Flame. This is Summit, who represent the 7 rays on Venus. He initiates us on the path of the ruby ray, okay, which he sets forth in his book, The Opening of the Seventh Seal. I did a video on the ruby ray. It's clearly titled. I commend that video to you because it does contain easily accessible spiritual information that is relevant to people in church. Right, he has held the hierarchical position of the Lord of the world. Since the darkest hours of Earth's history when our evolutions fell to the level of cavemen. So if they're saying that, see, Gautama Buddha, and this is also Summit, Gautama Buddha on January 1st, 1956 became Lord of the World. I've always associated Sanat Kumara with planetary logos for Venus. So Summit appears to be contradicting themselves unless they made a decision that it changed. Shambhala, ancient retreat of Sanat Kumara and Gautama Buddha. I know that some Hindu groups say that Sanat Kumara is Lord of the World, but we don't necessarily go in that direction. So I'm going to have to really check that and say something if it's listed incorrectly. Let's see if we can find. Yeah, they're not listed in order. The monos aren't listed in order, the right order either. Let's see here. Well, this is the exact opinion of the Summit Lighthouse regarding the Lord of the World. The current Lord of the World is Gautama Buddha, right? Having recently succeeded Sanat Kumara. That happened in 1956. So Sanat Kumara was the one who preceded Gautama Buddha. I don't know why it's listed incorrectly. It could be that was an incomplete thought. The previous Lord of the World was Sanat Kumara. Okay, this is official TSL. Gautama Buddha holds the office of the Lord of the World. And I mention this because there are connections between the Sanat Kumara story. Sanat Kumara brought the flame of life to the planet after all the heart flames had been extinguished. Sanat Kumara is the one who volunteered to reignite the flame. So Gautama Buddha, the current Lord of the World, let me read a couple of paragraphs directly from the encyclopedia. Gautama Buddha holds the office of Lord of the World, referred to as God of the Earth in Revelations, chapter 4, verse 4. Having recently succeeded Sanat Kumara, who held the office for tens of thousands of years. His is the highest governing office of the spiritual hierarchy for the planet, and yet Lord Gautama is truly the most humble amongst the ascended masters. At inner levels, he sustains the threefold flame, the divine spark for those life streams who have lost the direct contact with their I Am presence and who have made so much negative karma as to be unable to magnetize sufficient light from the Godhead to sustain their soul's physical incarnation on earth. Through a filigree thread of light, connecting his heart with the hearts of all God's children, Lord Gautama nourishes the flickering flame of life that ought to burn upon the altar of each heart with a greater magnitude of love, wisdom, and power, fed by each one's own Christ consciousness. Sanat Kumara, the previous Lord of the World. Gautama Buddha received first 1956. Had held the position of Lord of the World since the darkest hours of Earth's history. Known as the Ancient of Days, Sanat Kumara volunteered to come to Earth thousands of years ago when cosmic councils had decreed the dissolution of the planet. That's the Noah flood. Cosmic councils decreed the dissolution of the planet. In the Bible, God said, no more planet, I'm going to flood everything until everyone dies. So great was mankind's departure from cosmic law that the solar lords had determined that no further opportunity should be granted humanity who had willfully ignored and forgotten the God flame within their hearts. The requirement of the law for the saving of Terra was that one who qualified as the embodied Lamb be present in the physical octave to hold the balance and keep the threefold flame of life for and on behalf of every living soul. Sanat Kumara offered to be that one. In the opening of the seventh seal, Sanat Kumara tells the story of how Venusian devotees volunteered to accompany him and embody among mankind to assist in keeping the flame. The joy of opportunity, this is quoting, the joy of opportunity was mingled with the sorrow that the sense of separation brings. I had chosen a voluntary exile upon a dark star, and though it was destined to be Freedom's star, all knew it would be for me a long dark night of the soul. Then all at once from the valleys and the mountains there appeared a great gathering of my children. It was the souls of the 144,000 approaching our palace of light. They spiraled nearer and nearer as 12 companies singing the song of freedom, of love, and of victory. As we watched from the balcony, Venus and I, we saw the 13th company robed in white. It was the royal priesthood of the order of Melchizedek. When all of their numbers had assembled, ring upon ring surrounded our home, and their hymn of praise and adoration to me was concluded. Their spokesman stood before the balcony to address us on behalf of the great multitude. It was the soul of the one you know and love today as the Lord of the World, Gautama Buddha. And he addressed us, saying, O Ancient of Days, we have heard of the covenant which God hath made with thee this day, and of thy commitment to keep the flame of life until some among earth's evolution should be quickened and once again renew their vow to be bearers of the flame. O Ancient of Days, thou art to us our Guru, our very life, our God. We will not leave thee comfortless. We will go with thee. Thus they came to earth with Sanat Kumara and legions of angels, preceded by another retinue of light bearers who prepared the way and established the retreat of Shambhala, the city of White, on an island in the Gobi Sea, now the Gobi Desert. Okay, Shambhala is the city of White, on an island in the Gobi Sea, which is now the Gobi Desert. And the retreat was taken up etherically into the ether upon the dissolution of the Gobi Sea. There, Sanat Kumara anchored the focus of the threefold flame, establishing the initial thread of contact with all on earth by extending rays of light from his heart to their own. And there the volunteers from Venus embodied in dense veils of flesh to see Earth's evolutions through unto the victory of their vow. The first from among these unascended light bearers to respond to the call of the Lord of the world from the physical octave was understandably Gautama, and close with him was Maitreya. Both pursued the path of the Bodhisattva unto Buddhahood, Gautama finishing the course first, it says, and Maitreya second. It does say first and second. Gautama first, Maitreya second. Thus the two became Sanat Kumara's foremost disciples, the one ultimately succeeding him in the office of Lord of the world, the other as cosmic Christ and planetary Buddha. Which is because, right, Maitreya is cosmic Christ and planetary Buddha. That's one office, okay? That's one office. Cosmic Christ, planetary Buddha is all in the same office. It's not two separate offices. It's not office of cosmic Christ, office of planetary Buddha. It's office of cosmic Christ and planetary Buddha, and for us, it's Maitreya who occupies that office, who dwells there. And Gautama formally occupied that office. It was there when Sanat Kumara was Lord of the world. Other things happened in 56 too. Isn't that the year? It's 53 or 56. I don't think that it was January. It could have been January 1st when Jesus graduated from the 6th ray. I'll find the date for you. It could have all happened at the same time. Actually, Lord Lanto's transition to second ray Chohan occurred 2 years later in July. And we're calling Sanat Kumara Regent, Lord of the World. I was talking to you folks about the office of Mother Regent, which is also an office. And Gautama is hierarch of Shambhala. Okay, that makes sense. I'll read the rest of this. Transfer at the office. At the moment of the transfer of the mantle of Lord of the World on January 1st, 1956, Gautama Buddha assumed the responsibility for sustaining the lifeline to Earth's evolutions through his own heart flame, and Sanat Kumara, as regent, Lord of the World, returned to his home star Venus, where he maintains an intense activity of involvement with the Great White Brotherhood's service on planet Earth. Gautama's former office of Cosmic Christ and Planetary Buddha was simultaneously filled by Lord Maitreya. In the same ceremony which took place at the Royal Teton Retreat, the office of World Teacher, formerly held by Maitreya, was passed to Lord Jesus and his dear friend and disciple Saint Francis, Kuthumi. Lord Lanto took the Chohanship of the Second Ray in July 1958, which had been held by Kuthumi, and beloved Nada assumed the office of Chohan of the Sixth Ray, which had been held by Jesus during the Piscean Age, of which he was also the hierarch. Saint Germain with Portia assumed the rulership of Aquarius on May 1st, 1954. While Maitreya represents the cosmic Christ and planetary Buddha, Jesus holds the office of the personal Christ as the great exemplar of each one's own holy Christ's self. Representatives in the world, Lord Gautama presides as hierarch of Shambhala, now on the etheric plane to which the physical retreat has been withdrawn. Throughout the ages, the messengers of the Brotherhood, known and unknown, have held the balance in the physical octave for the flame and the Buddha of Shambhala. Thus, Jesus, as the anointed messenger of Lord Maitreya, the cosmic Christ, was the open door through his sacred heart for the light of the Father, represented in the persons of Maitreya, Gautama, and Sanat Kumara, to be anchored in the hearts of the multitudes of Earth's people. The Lord Jesus Christ defined his office in the physical octave according to cosmic law when he said, "As long as I am in the world, the I am that I am, the Word which I incarnate, is the light of the world." It was this anchoring of the light of the I am presence in his heart chakra that enabled Jesus to take upon himself planetary karma, the sins of the world, in order that souls of light might follow him on the path of Christhood until they too should bear in their body temples the light of the Son of God. So that's part of the answer. You know, I think that it was why we don't mention, as I said before, there's a silence surrounding Bridge to Freedom, but I believe it was Geraldine Innocente, head of Bridge to Freedom, who had the revelation about Jesus going to Office of World Teacher. I think that's the case. And we are world teachers too. That's another name for chelas. If you got tired of saying chela all the time, I'm a world teacher. I'm not saying to you that I am. When I say that, yes, well, I am Jesus and Kuthumi, so it is accurate, you know. But so are others. But it's perfectly acceptable to refer to oneself as a world teacher. It's okay. I'll look up whether it was Mark or it was either Mark or Geraldine who received the information about the. But I've always associated it with Bridge to Freedom. So although we don't mention Bridge to Freedom, Mark was a member of Bridge to Freedom. Why Bridge to Freedom is not mentioned is a bit beyond me. Okay. So that's some pretty good information. I'm just trying to get the camera to adjust a little bit before I go on with who says what about Sanat Kumara and Noah. So it's really the Lord of the World listing, I think, that needs to be, actually, the Lord of the World listing is correct. I'm talking about the encyclopedia. No, today as Lord of the World. Could be that someone is just assuming that when you read that, you understand that there's also a regent position within that office. I consider them to be two separate offices, but in any event, it doesn't specify on the Sanat Kumara page that it doesn't say Regent Lord of the World. It just says Lord of the World. But in a later paragraph, it does mention Gautama as Lord of the World on the same listing. I mean, as far as the Noah flood's concerned, the Gobi Sea dried up too, right? God floods the world, wherever that quote-unquote world is. It's nebulously defined, and we'll look in the Bible to figure out where it's actually going on in, the ancient Middle East. But that's a tie, because everything is flooded. There's a whole sea. The world is one giant sea, and then the water recedes. That also happened with Shambhala. Shambhala was just on an island around the Gobi Sea. The sea eventually recedes, and rather than Shambhala is actually taken up as no longer in the physical quadrant. It's rather etheric only. So, I mean, water evaporates in both stories. I don't know what that means. I want to say this quickly about Yule, because we're talking about that in the context of the chilling adventures of Sabrina too. Elsewhere I talked to you a little bit about a lawsuit that a group of black occultists brought against the show, and the show features material from which I personally benefit. So I'm opposed to their trying to shut down that operation because it is useful information. But Yule is discussed as an alternative to Christian Christmas. Here it says the ancient custom of the Yule log has come down to us from the service. This is official TSL. Has come down to us from the service rendered by Sanat Kumara, who each year consecrated a focus of the sacred fire in the physical octaves. It became tradition for the people to come across many miles to take home a piece of the Yule log and to use it to light their fires through the coming 12-month cycle. Thus, the focus of his physical flame was tangibly manifest in the dwelling places of the people of the earth, enabling them to have actual physical contact with the focus of the Lord of the World in their midst. Sanat Kumara's mission was completed on January 1st, 1956, when his most capable disciple, Buddha Gautama, was awarded the position of Lord of the World. Having enough momentum, okay, that's why, having enough momentum to hold the balance for the planet and the focus of the threefold flame. Sanat Kumara then became Regent Lord of the world, and in that capacity continues to assist Earth's evolutions from his home on Venus. Right. Until this change in office, Sanat Kumara released tremendous light to the planet each year at the Wesak festival. During the full moon in Taurus, his radiation was anchored through his disciples, Lord Gautama Buddha, Lord Maitreya, and the one who currently holds the office of the Mahachohan. These three anchored the focus of the threefold flame from the heart of Sanat Kumara on behalf of the Lord of the world. They were the step-down transformers for his intense radiation, is what it says. And it wants to continue here by reminding us that the supreme god of Zoroastrianism, known as Ahura Mazda, I have a hard time saying it, Ahura Mazda, is Sanat Kumara. Okay, this is too good to pass up too. After the withdrawal of Shambhala to the etheric octave, Sanat Kumara embodied as Dipamkara, Dipamkara, the lamp-lighting Buddha. The Sanskrit word Dipamkara means kindler of lights or the luminous. In Buddhist tradition, Dipamkara is a legendary Buddha who lived long, long ago, the first of 24 Buddhas who preceded Gautama Buddha. Dipamkara prophesied that the ascetic Sumedha would become the future Buddha Gautama. Sumedha, all official, TSL. Buddhists consider Dipamkara, Gautama Buddha, and Lord Maitreya to be the Buddhas of the three times, past, present, and future. We can understand this to mean that Dipamkara is the past Lord of the world, Gautama Buddha is the present Lord of the world, and Maitreya will be the future Lord of the world. But Dipamkara is the past Lord of the world as Sanat Kumara as Regent Lord. Maitreya will be the future Lord of the world, but that's not happening anytime soon, to the best of my information. Some people in the New Age world, and also some Buddhists, I believe, think that that's actually, that it's changed. I've read people who believe that Maitreya is the Lord of the world, and I absolutely do not think that's accurate. And I really hope that Summit doesn't cave, because it's just not, it's not time. I'll discuss my opinion about Maitreya elsewhere. This is interesting. I made an error one day, a spoken error, and talked about, I said Sanat Kumara. There is a Sanat Kumara here, according to Summit. And I said it sounded like it might be a real guy. And it is a real person, real God. Buddhism, under the header Buddhism, on Sanat Kumara and Lady Master Venus topic page in the encyclopedia. Scroll down. In Buddhism, there is a great god known as Brahma Sanat Kumara. His name also means forever a youth. Brahma Sanat Kumara is a being so elevated that he must create an apparition body in order to be seen by the gods of the heaven of the 33. Sakha, the ruler of the gods, describes his appearance. He outshines other devas in radiance and glory, just as a figure made of gold outshines the human figure. Okay, I'll pass on Kartikeya for the time being. Wow. Okay. Okay. So, if you just search for Noah, you're actually at the encyclopedia. You're actually not going to come up with a topic page. You will come up instead with a bunch of links that mention the flood of Noah, including a link to the Tower of Babel, reference to Mark as an embodiment of Noah. So Mark was Noah and Origin, and Akhenaten, a number of other. Obviously, I'm not listing all of them here. As a reminder, he was Noah. It ties into listings. Noah is mentioned in Uriel and Aurora, great divine director. Let's see what he says. Right. This ties in as well. She is connecting Atlantis directly to the Noah story. Okay. Prior to the sinking of Atlantis, while Noah was yet building his ark, so we're saying directly that it's really Atlantis. Like Noah is there on Atlantis. That's the flood. It is goodbye Atlantis. That's the connection. Prior to the sinking of Atlantis, while Noah was yet building his ark, this is on the Sanat Kumara, the Great Divine Director topic page. Prior to the sinking of Atlantis, while Noah was yet building his ark and warning the people of the great flood to come, the Great Divine Director called Saint Germain and a few faithful priests to transport the flame of freedom from the temple of purification to a place of safety in the Carpathian foothills in Transylvania. Here they carried on the sacred ritual of expanding the fires of freedom, even while mankind's karma was being exacted by divine decree. In succeeding embodiments, Saint Germain and his followers, under the guidance of the Great Divine Director, rediscovered the flame and continued to guard the shrine. Later, the Great Divine Director, assisted by his disciple, established a retreat at the site of the flame and founded the House of Rakazi, the Royal House of Hungary. Because of his association with the House of Rakazi, the Great Divine Director bears the appellation Master R, the R signifying Rakazi. So that happened. To the best of my knowledge, Sanat Kumara is bringing the flame back, but while the flood is actually occurring in the Bible, the flood is Noah's building the ark. The flood comes. As the flood's coming, the great divine director and Saint Germain and a few others take the flame of freedom from the temple of purification to the Carpathian foothills in Transylvania. That's when it happened, during the sinking of Atlantis, which was also the Noah flood. Temple of purification about to be canned by the water. And that's what happened. So it was a separate project. Right, and when that flame was brought, that's the 144,000 souls of light, when Sanat Kumara brought the flame to Shambhala. I'll read this too, the Shambhala page, because it does mention the flood. It mentions the Yule log as well. But first I'm going to take a bit of a break to review Why don't I keep it all together and just go ahead and read this now? And perhaps this will constitute enough information about the connection between the Noah flood and the sinking of Atlantis. The kingdom of Shambhala plays a central role in Tibetan Buddhism. There's also allegedly a secret Shambhala in the Himalayas, but for most purposes, we discuss we at the central part of CT discuss it as being over the Gobi Desert. That's esoteric to say that Shambhala is also in the Himalayas, but I've heard that pretty convincingly argued. Let's see here. Gautama Buddha was the first initiate to serve under Sanat Kumara. Shambhala, an ancient retreat of Sanat Kumara and Gautama Buddha. The Shambhala, the ancient home of Sanat Kumara and Gautama Buddha, is located in the etheric realm over the Gobi Desert in China. This is under the masters in their retreats on the standard TSL site. You can actually get there by going to Ascended Masters Spiritual Retreats. Remember, there are two S's in there. Ascended Masters Spiritual Retreats.org, and then go through and look for the Shambhala listing. The retreat was originally built for Sanat Kumara, hierarch of Venus, who long ago came to Earth in her darkest hour when all light had gone out in her evolutions and there was not a single individual on the planet who gave adoration to the God presence or the inner Buddha. Okay? Sanat Kumara was accompanied on this mission by a band of 144,000 souls of light who, with him, had volunteered to keep the flame of life on behalf of Earth's people. This they vowed to do until the children of God, who had been turned away from their first love by fallen angels, would respond to the love of God and turn once again to serve their mighty I Am presence. 400 who formed the avant-garde went before Sanat Kumara to build on the White Island in the brilliant blue Gobi Sea, where the Gobi Desert now is, the magnificent retreat that was to become, for all time, the legendary Shambhala. This city was originally a physical replica of the Venusian city of the Kumaras. The volunteers from Venus focused here the 144 virtues of the flames of the elements, composing a diamond replica of the focus in the great hub. The city of White was approached from the mainland by a beautiful marble bridge. Shambhala's main temple and altar of the Threefold Flame. Next section. The main temple of Shambhala is marked by a golden dome and is surrounded by terraces, flame fountains, and 7 temples, one for each of the 7 rays, situated on a wide avenue resembling the Champs-Élysées, lined with trees and flowers, flame fountains, and tropical birds, including bluebirds of happiness. Okay. The altar of the Threefold Flame is in its main temple, where the star of Sanat Kumara is hung from the ceiling over the altar. This, the principal focus of the Threefold Flame upon the planet, was established by Sanat Kumara when he came long ago. Through it, he connected a ray from his heart to every life stream evolving on the planet, and thus assisted their holy Christ selves to raise mankind's consciousness back to the place where they could be taught the laws of self-mastery, the tradition of the Yule log. In past ages, people would come each year from many miles to witness the visible, physical, sacred fire and to take home a piece of wood consecrated by Sanat Kumara to light their fires through the coming year. Thus began the tradition of the Yule log, commemorating the return to the fire of Christhood. Sanat Kumara founded the activities of the Great White Brotherhood on the planetary level, and their headquarters remain here today. Here the masters trained messengers to go forth with the teachings of the Christ, adapted to every level of human consciousness. Each year, the fruits of all endeavors made by angels, elementals, and representatives of the Brotherhood in the world of form are returned to Shambhala in the fall and are brought to the feet of the Lord of the world. The angels come on St. Michael's Day, September 29th. The elementals come at the end of October, and representatives of the Brotherhood at the end of November, when in America the Feast of Gratitude is celebrated at Thanksgiving. Legends of Shambhala. In the legends of the East, Shambhala is the name of a mythical kingdom, an earthly paradise said to exist somewhere between the Himalayas and the Gobi Desert. Ancient Tibetan texts describe the kingdom as a beautiful place in an inaccessible part of Asia, formed of 8 regions, each surrounded by a ring of snow-capped mountains, and therefore looking like an 8-petaled blossom. It is an idyllic country free of strife and crime, whose inhabitants have attained great spiritual development and powers. The kingdom of Shambhala plays a central role in Tibetan Buddhism. Author Edwin Birnbaum writes that the sacred texts of the Tibetans speak of Shambhala as a mystical kingdom hidden behind snow peaks somewhere north of Tibet. They're a line of... Right, so basically what we're saying, as I said before, Shambhala also present in the Himalayas, according to the Eastern legends, in other words, and Summit is openly accepting that here. Author Edwin Birnbaum writes that the sacred texts of the Tibetans speak of Shambhala as a mystical kingdom hidden behind snow peaks somewhere north of Tibet. Their line of enlightened kings is supposed to be guarding the most secret teachings of Buddhism for a time when all truth in the world outside is lost in war and the lust for power and wealth. Then, according to prophecy, a future king of Shambhala will come out with a great army to destroy the forces of evil and bring in a golden age. Under his enlightened rule, the world will become at last a place of peace and plenty, filled with the riches of wisdom and compassion. The texts add that a long and mystical journey across a wilderness of deserts and mountains leads to Shambhala. Whoever manages to reach this distant sanctuary, having overcome numerous hardships and obstacles along the way, will find there a secret teaching that will enable him to master time and liberate himself from its bondage. The texts warn, however, that only those who are called and have the necessary spiritual preparation will be able to get to Shambhala. Others will find only blinding storms and empty mountains, or even death. Gautama Buddha was the first initiate to serve under Sanat Kumara, hence the one chosen to succeed him in the office of the Lord of the World. On January 1st, 1956, Sanat Kumara placed his mantle on Lord Gautama, whereupon the Chela, par excellence, of the great Guru also became the hierarch of Shambhala. Today, Gautama Buddha sustains the tie to the threefold flames of all mankind. It will be sustained until each individual makes his ascension in the light. Sanat Kumara, retaining the title of Regent Lord of the World, returned to Venus and to his twin flame, Lady Master Venus, who had kept the home fires burning during his long exile. There he continued his service with the Great White Brotherhood and the advanced evolutions of his home star on behalf of planet Earth. Called to be taken to Shambhala with Lord Gautama Buddha. Final section. Call in the name of your own Christ self to Lord Gautama Buddha to invoke assistance on your spiritual path, following the heart of the Buddha and your own inner Buddha. So now this is a prayer. In the name of the Christ, my own real self, I call to the heart of the I Am Presence and to the Angel of the Presence, to Archangel Michael, to take me in my soul and in my soul consciousness to the etheric retreat of Gautama Buddha at Shambhala. I ask that I may be tutored in the practice of accelerating the purifying and balancing of my threefold flame and using the violet flame to hold the balance of the earth. And I ask that all information necessary to the fulfillment of my divine plan be released to my outer waking consciousness as it is required. I thank thee and I accept this done in the full power of the risen Christ. I'm going to leave it there, I believe. So, and they're going to be, obviously, there's some interesting links here to Blavatsky. Byzantine claim about Atlantis and Noah's flood. Someone posted, it's basically accusing Blavatsky of having locked off with someone's information, which they always make that claim about holy figures in our lineage, but also everywhere else. That's a common concern with varying degrees of applicability. Okay, well, I won't use this particular source because I would have to unpack too much of it. But let's see what else we can see. Okay, not that. GnosticTeachings.org. So they're basically referring to it as a universal flood, essentially. The Book of Zion, King Phebetan of Atlantis. That's from 1877. That was in Unveiled Mysteries. I don't know. I'm not going to dig into the Blavatsky quite yet. But I think that what we have so far is going to be sufficient information for everyone to